What if Yoda and Mace Windu went to Naboo instead of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan? What would happen then? Let's find out. So in this timeline, the deviation from the original timeline would occur right after Mace tells Qui-Gon that Anakin is too old to be trained. That is where this story starts. Let's begin. Yoda closed his eyes, listening intently to Mace's words and Qui-Gon's responses. The ancient Jedi Master sensed that this moment was pivotal, and the decision regarding Anakin's fate needed to be made with great care. Slowly, the noises around him faded as Yoda entered a meditative state, seeking answers from the Force. In this heightened state of awareness, Yoda sensed all those around him within the Force and perceived their emotions. The loudest feelings emanated from Qui-Gon and young Anakin. Qui-Gon radiated disappointment with the Council's decision, while Anakin was clearly in distress. Yoda, like every other Jedi, was familiar with the prophecy of the Chosen One, as interpreted by Master Qui-Gon. It spoke of a child born of the Force during a time of great turmoil, destined to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force. Yoda could sense no deceit in Qui-Gon's words about the boy's miraculous birth, and he believed the Jedi Master's account of facing a possible Sith on Tatooine. These events seemed to align with the prophecy, but what stood out the most to Yoda was the trust Anakin had in Master Qui-Gon. He felt that this bond, or perhaps Qui-Gon himself, would greatly impact Anakin's future, whether he was trained as a Jedi or not. Yoda then pondered the best course of action. Was sending Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to Naboo, possibly to face a Sith, truly the wisest decision under the current circumstances? Yoda also sensed Obi-Wan's slight turmoil, feeling somewhat rejected by his master. A temporary feeling, Yoda knew, but one that could prove to be a distraction in the present moment. After careful consideration, Yoda opened his eyes and spoke. "Stay in the temple. You should, Qui-Gon. With you, young Skywalker will remain. To Naboo, Master Windu and I will go. Accompany the Queen, we shall. Decided the boy's fate will be upon our return." Qui-Gon did not object to Yoda's decision. He had full confidence that Masters Yoda and Mace Windu would be more than capable of handling any threat they might encounter on Naboo. His primary concern now rested solely on Anakin and his fate, which, as Yoda had said, would be decided upon their return. Qui-Gon knew he had to be patient and wait. With a respectful bow, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan left the council chamber, Anakin following close behind. Once outside, Obi-Wan excused himself politely and departed. However, his politeness only thinly veiled his true feelings, which were so palpable that even young Anakin seemed to sense them. Noticing the tension, Anakin turned to Qui-Gon with worry in his eyes. "Master Qui-Gon," he said softly, "I don't want to be a problem." Qui-Gon knelt down to meet Anakin at eye level. "Anakin, you are not a problem. You are gifted with a great destiny ahead of you. The path may not be clear right now, but I believe in you, and I will do everything in my power to help you." Anakin nodded, somewhat reassured by Qui-Gon's words. With a gentle smile, Qui-Gon stood up and led Anakin away, likely to find temporary quarters for Anakin within the temple. Meanwhile, inside the council chamber, the discussion continued. The Jedi Masters debated the exact plan and procedure for the Naboo mission, considering various strategies and potential outcomes. Eventually, the council meeting concluded. Masters Yoda and Mace Windu prepared to depart, gathering what they needed for the journey ahead. They soon left the temple to rendezvous with Queen Amidala and her entourage. The journey to Naboo proceeded much as it had in the original timeline. The group traveled discreetly, their ship slipping past the Trade Federation's blockade with little difficulty. Upon reaching Naboo, Amidala's plan to ally with the Gungans unfolded as before, and the battle strategy remained largely unchanged. The Gungans would engage the droid army on the plains, drawing their forces away from Theed, while Amidala's team would infiltrate the capital city to capture Viceroy Gunray. As the plan was set in motion, the diversionary battle on the plains began. Meanwhile, Amidala, along with her security team, Panaka, and the two Jedi Masters, made their way into Theed. The group's progress through Theed was notably smoother than in the original timeline. As they entered a vast pillared hall within the palace, both Yoda and Mace Windu suddenly sensed a dark presence through the Force. They exchanged a knowing glance, their hands moving instinctively to their lightsabers. At that moment, a figure in a black cloak appeared at the far end of the hall. As he stepped forward, the hood fell back, revealing the red and black tattooed face of a Zabrak. His yellow eyes gleamed with malice as he ignited his double-bladed lightsaber, the twin crimson blades humming ominously in the suddenly silent hall. Yoda studied the figure before him. With a calm but firm voice, he addressed the group without taking his eyes off Maul. "Deal with this. I will. Continue the mission. You must." Yoda then reached for his lightsaber. As he ignited it, the brilliant green blade sprang to life with a familiar snap hiss. Yoda began to move forward. The Force flowed through Yoda's ancient body like a torrent. his connection to it deepening with each step. Mace Windu, sensing the sheer magnitude of Yoda's power, knew that the Grand Master was more than capable of handling this threat. He quickly turned to Queen Amidala and the others. "We must move now," he said urgently. With a final glance at Yoda, Mace ushered the group towards a side passage. As he approached the Sabrak, Yoda's eyes narrowed slightly, his gaze penetrating and thoughtful. Despite the palpable darkness emanating from the figure before him, Yoda took a moment to assess the situation. In that brief pause, Yoda could sense the raw power and hatred radiating from the Sabrak, but also detected an underlying current of something else. Fear, uncertainty. The complexity of emotions suggested this was not the Sith Master, but rather an apprentice. Powerful, yes, but still learning. Still moldable, perhaps. This assumption reinforced Yoda's initial instinct to attempt communication before combat. "Who are you, young one?" Yoda asked, his voice calm yet firm. "Your master." "Who is it?" Maul's yellow eyes flashed with anger, his grip tightening on his double-bladed lightsaber. He remained silent, his body tense and ready to strike. Yoda continued, his tone taking on a note of compassion. "Sense great anger in you, I do. Need not be this way, it does. Talk, we can." For a brief moment, something flickered in Maul's eyes, perhaps surprise at Yoda's approach, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed surge of hatred. With a snarl, Maul lunged forward, covering the remaining distance between them with astonishing speed. The air crackled as red and green blades clashed. Maul's attack was relentless, his double-bladed saber whirling in a deadly arc. He drew deeply on the dark side, channeling all his hatred and rage into each strike. Yet Yoda met each blow with seemingly effortless grace. The diminutive Jedi Master's form blurred as he leapt and spun, his movements so fast they were almost imperceptible. Where Maul's style was aggressive and direct, Yoda's was fluid and unpredictable. Pillars cracked and chunks of marble flew as stray blows struck the palace's architecture. Through it all, Yoda remained centered, drawing on the light side of the Force to match Maul's dark power. As the battle raged on, Yoda's strategy became increasingly clear. The Grand Master was not fighting to kill, but to capture. His movements, while lightning fast, were primarily defensive. He deflected Maul's furious attacks with precision, allowing the Sith apprentice to exhaust himself against an impenetrable defense. Each time Maul lunged, Yoda would sidestep or leap, causing the Zabrak to stumble or strike empty air. Yoda's eyes remained focused, watching for any opening. He knew that to truly capture Maul, he needed to disarm him without causing serious injury. The Jedi Master patiently waited for the right moment, all while continuing his relentless defense and subtle offensive maneuvers. As the duel progressed, Yoda began to speak again, his voice calm despite the ferocity of their combat. "Consumed by hatred, you are. Find peace, you must." Maul snarled in response, but Yoda persisted. "Your master, using you he is. See this you do not." These words seemed to hit a nerve. For a split second, Maul's focus wavered, his yellow eyes flickering with a mix of confusion and anger. It was the opening Yoda had been waiting for. In a move almost too fast to follow, Yoda leapt high into the air, flipping over Maul's head. His lightsaber flashed 3 times in rapid succession. The first strike caught Maul's right arm just below the elbow, severing it cleanly. Before Maul could even register the pain, the second and third strikes followed, cutting through both legs just above the knees. Maul's scream of agony and rage echoed through the palace halls as he collapsed to the floor, his lightsaber clattering away uselessly. The Sith apprentice writhed on the ground, his yellow eyes wide with shock and pain. Yoda landed softly a few feet away, his lightsaber still humming. He looked down at the dismembered Sith. The Jedi Master had achieved his goal. Maul was neutralized and captured, but still alive to provide information. Meanwhile, Mace Windu had led Queen Amidala and her team through the palace. Their progress was swift, encountering only minimal resistance from the remaining battle droids. As they reached the throne room, they found Viceroy Gunray and his advisors attempting to flee. With a single gesture, Mace used the Force to seal the exits, trapping the Trade Federation leadership inside. Queen Amidala, her resolve unwavering, stepped forward to confront Gunray and demand his surrender. Simultaneously, the battle above Naboo raged on. Without young Anakin's unexpected assistance, the fighter pilots faced a greater challenge in destroying the droid control ship. However, the combined efforts of the Naboo pilots eventually turned the tide. After a grueling battle, a well-placed proton torpedo found its mark, destroying the control ship. As the droid armies across Naboo suddenly deactivated, cheers erupted throughout Theed and the battlefields beyond. In the aftermath, the Jedi turned their attention to the captured Sith. As their ship lifted off from Theed, carrying the unconscious form of Darth Maul, both Yoda and Mace Windu could sense that this was only the beginning. The re-emergence of the Sith posed grave questions, and they hoped that their prisoner might provide some of the answers they desperately needed. The journey back to Coruscant was uneventful. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, the sprawling cityscape of the galactic capital came into view. The Jedi Temple stood as a beacon of light amidst the sea of buildings, but their destination lay elsewhere. To their surprise and mild frustration, they were informed that protocol dictated Maul be remanded to Republic custody before the Jedi could formally interrogate him. Upon landing, Yoda and Mace were met by a contingent of Senate guards and representatives from the Judicial Department. "A formality this is?" Yoda inquired. The lead judicial representative nodded. "Yes, Master Yoda. As the suspect is a person of interest in the Trade Federation's illegal actions against Naboo, Senate procedures require us to process him through official channels first. We assure you, it's merely a legal technicality." Mace Windu's expression remained stoic, but his voice carried a hint of tension. How long will this technicality take? The judicial representative shifted slightly under Mace's intense gaze. "We anticipate it shouldn't take more than a day or two at most, Master Windu. The Judicial Department is treating this as a high-priority case." Yoda's ears twitched slightly as he considered the situation. "Understand the importance of this matter, you do?" The representative nodded firmly. "Of course, Master Yoda. We've been briefed on the sensitive nature of the situation. Rest assured, we'll handle this with the utmost discretion and efficiency." Mace leaned forward slightly. "And where exactly will the prisoner be held?" "The Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center, Masters," the representative replied. "We prepared a specially secured cell in the high-security wing, and only authorized personnel will have access to the wing." Mace and Yoda exchanged a brief glance, a wealth of unspoken understanding passing between them. "Very well," Mace said finally. "We'll comply with the procedure, but we expect to be notified immediately once approval for transfer is granted." Following this, the unconscious Zabrak was carefully moved to a secure transport vehicle. As the Jedi watched the transport depart, flanked by Senate guards, Mace turned to Yoda. "I sense there's more at play here than mere bureaucracy, Master Yoda." Yoda nodded slowly, his eyes following the disappearing transport. "Clouded, the future is. Cautious we must be. To the temple we should return now. Much to discuss, the council has," Yoda said. Upon their return to the Jedi Temple, the council convened in their circular chamber. The air was thick with tension as they debated the recent events and their implications. However, one matter loomed largest in their discussions: the fate of young Anakin Skywalker. After hours of deliberation, a vote was called. The decision was not unanimous, but a majority agreed. Anakin would be trained as a Jedi. Several factors swayed this momentous decision. Firstly, Qui-Gon Jinn's unwavering conviction was impossible to ignore. The maverick Jedi had made it clear that he would train Anakin with or without the Council's blessing, even if it meant leaving the Order. The Council decided it was better to keep both Qui-Gon and Anakin within the fold, where they could be guided and monitored. Secondly, the encounter with the Zabrak warrior on Naboo had shaken the Council deeply. The possibility that the Sith had indeed returned from extinction or had been hiding all along suddenly made the prophecy of the Chosen One seem less like ancient legend and more like pressing reality. The timing of Anakin's discovery and the Sith's re-emergence was too neat to be mere coincidence. Lastly, Anakin's unprecedented midi-chlorian count and raw potential could not be overlooked. In light of these decisions, the Council also approved Obi-Wan Kenobi's trials, recognizing his readiness to become a full Jedi Knight. As the sun began to set over Coruscant, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Anakin were summoned to the Council chamber. They stood in the center, surrounded by the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy. Yoda's eyes twinkled as he spoke. "Reached a decision, the Council has," he announced. "Trained as a Jedi, young Skywalker will be." Qui-Gon's shoulders relaxed visibly, while Anakin's eyes widened in excitement and disbelief. Mace Windu then said the following: "Qui-Gon, you will oversee the boy's initial training. And Obi-Wan," he paused, allowing a small smile to cross his usually stern face, "you are to prepare for your trials. The Council believes you are ready to become a Jedi Knight." Obi-Wan bowed deeply, his face a mixture of pride and humility. "Thank you, Masters. I am honored." Later that night, as the Coruscant skyline glittered with countless lights, an urgent communication came through to the Jedi Temple. The message, initially received by the Night Staff, was quickly escalated through the Order's hierarchy until it reached Mace Windu. The Jedi Master's face grew grim as he listened to the panicked voice of the official from the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center. "Master Windu, we have a situation," the official said, his voice tight with tension. "The high-security wing where we're holding the Zabrak prisoner has gone completely dark. We've lost all surveillance data from that sector." Mace's brow furrowed deeply. "How long has it been since you lost contact?" he asked the officer. "We noticed the Outage approximately 10 minutes ago. We're attempting to restore systems and send in a security team, but I felt it crucial to alert the Jedi Order given the sensitive nature of the prisoner. You made the right call, Mace replied. We're on our way. Keep us posted on any developments, no matter how small. After ending the call, Mace immediately sent out a priority transmission to Yoda and the rest of the council. The contents of the message went as follows. Masters, we have a situation at the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center. The Zabrak prisoners' wing has gone dark. I'm heading there now. Join me as soon as you can. Without waiting for responses, Mace left the temple, his speeder cutting through Coruscant's night sky with urgency. Upon arrival at the detention center, Mace was met by the facility's chief of security, whose face was ashen. Master Windu, we've just regained access to the wing, the chief said, his voice shaking slightly. Mace's eyes narrowed. And? The chief hesitated, then continued, It's bad, sir. There was an explosion, highly sophisticated. It breached several cells, including the Zabraks, many prisoners, guards, and the Zabrak. They're all dead. Show me, Mace demanded. As they walked, the chief elaborated. The explosive seems to have been molecularly bonded to the cell walls, undetectable by our scans. It was detonated remotely, causing a cascading failure in our systems. They soon reached the prison wing where the attack took place, and Mace saw the devastation firsthand. The corridor was scorched, debris littered the floor, and the acrid smell of smoke hung in the air. The Zabrak's body? Mace inquired. The chief pointed to a covered form on the ground. There, sir. Identified by species, but it's not in good condition. Mace knelt beside the covered form, his movements deliberate and controlled. With a steady hand, he lifted the cover. For a brief moment, his stoic expression faltered, a flicker of shock and revulsion crossing his face. Just as quickly, he replaced the cover and rose to his feet, turning away from the grisly sight. Without a word, Mace strode out of the wing. As he emerged from the building, he noticed a Jedi shuttle descending towards the detention center. But it was too late. The Sith was dead, and with him, vital information the Jedi desperately needed. Mace's thoughts turned to the perpetrator. The officials would have their theories. A rescue attempt gone wrong, perhaps, or a rival faction eliminating a threat. But as Mace gazed out across the sprawling cityscape of Coruscant, a chilling realization settled over him. The answer was clear, hiding in plain sight amidst the glittering lights and towering structures of the galactic capital. This was the work of the Master. The apprentice had failed and become a liability, so the Master had eliminated him, right from within a high-security prison in the very heart of the Republic. A cold dread settled in Mace's stomach. The Sith had not just returned, they were already here, operating with impunity in the shadows of Coruscant itself. In the days that followed, a joint investigation was launched by the Jedi Order and Republic authorities. The investigation uncovered evidence of droid involvement in the prison attack, but upon examination, all the droid's memory units were found to be completely fried, yielding no usable data. As weeks passed, the trail grew colder, leads dried up, and witnesses provided conflicting accounts. The case that had once been the talk of Coruscant slowly faded from public attention, becoming little more than a mysterious footnote in the annals of Republic security. Though the investigation ultimately proved fruitless, it left a lasting impact on the Jedi Order. A new sense of vigilance permeated the temple. Security protocols were tightened, and Jedi throughout the galaxy were advised to be on high alert for any signs of Sith activity. Amidst this atmosphere of heightened awareness, life in the Order continued. Obi-Wan Kenobi, having successfully completed his trials, was formally knighted in a solemn ceremony. The young Jedi stood tall as Master Yoda severed his Padawan braid, marking the end of his apprenticeship and the beginning of his journey as a full-fledged Jedi Knight. Not long after, in a quieter but equally significant ceremony, Anakin Skywalker was officially made Qui-Gon's Padawan learner, the start of a long journey for the Chosen One. From the outset, Qui-Gon recognized that Anakin's training would need to be unconventional. Qui-Gon adapted his approach, focusing on harnessing Anakin's raw power, while simultaneously teaching him control and discipline. Much of Anakin's training took place away from the Jedi Temple. Qui-Gon believed that real-world experiences would be more beneficial for Anakin than endless hours of meditation and theoretical study. They traveled extensively, visiting diverse planets and cultures. These journeys served multiple purposes. They exposed Anakin to the complexities of the galaxy, honed his diplomatic skills, and allowed him to witness firsthand the importance of the Jedi's peacekeeping role. Qui-Gon also placed a strong emphasis on practical skills. He encouraged Anakin to pursue his passion for mechanics and piloting, recognizing that these talents could be valuable assets to a Jedi. Under Qui-Gon's guidance, Anakin's natural abilities with machines flourished, and he became an exceptional pilot, even by Jedi standards. Perhaps the most significant deviation from traditional Jedi training was Qui-Gon's approach to Anakin's attachments. Recognizing that Anakin's bond with his mother was too strong to simply ignore or suppress, Qui-Gon made the controversial decision to return to Tatooine. And then he managed to free Shmi from Watto. And once she was freed, Qui-Gon didn't simply leave Shmi to fend for herself. He took steps to ensure she would be able to build a new life on Tatooine. This act of compassion strengthened Anakin's trust in both Qui-Gon and the Jedi Order. In the years that followed, Anakin and Qui-Gon would occasionally return to Tatooine to visit Shmi. These visits allowed Anakin to maintain his connection with his mother while also learning to balance his duties as a Jedi with his personal attachments. Eventually, Shmi found a new family, and Anakin was very happy for her. As Anakin grew older, his power in the Force continued to increase at an astonishing rate. Anakin's lightsaber training was equally intense. Qui-Gon, recognizing Anakin's natural athleticism and aggression, taught him an adapted form of Ataru, the acrobatic fourth form of lightsaber combat. This suited Anakin's dynamic fighting style while also teaching him the importance of precision and control. Throughout his training, Anakin was exposed to a wide variety of missions. He and Qui-Gon mediated disputes on distant worlds, protected vulnerable communities from pirates and criminals, and even undertook covert operations for the Jedi Council. These experiences shaped Anakin into a capable and compassionate Jedi. As the years progressed, Anakin continued to grow into a capable and respected Jedi under Qui-Gon's guidance. However, the galaxy was changing, and events were unfolding that would soon test Anakin and the entire Jedi Order. When news reached Anakin and Qui-Gon of an assassination attempt on Senator Padme Amidala, they were far from Coruscant on a diplomatic mission. Anakin, remembering the young queen he had met years ago, expressed to Qui-Gon his wish to have been there to help. Qui-Gon, sensing Anakin's lingering attachment, gently reminded him, "There will be time for that, Padawan. For now, we must focus on our current mission." Anakin nodded, letting go of his disappointment and refocusing on their task. Meanwhile, Palpatine, operating in the shadows as Darth Sidious, continued to pursue his grand plan for galactic domination. Count Dooku, now fully embracing his role as Darth Tyrannus, worked tirelessly to further Sidious's schemes. So, quick side note, it is worth noting that in the original timeline, Dooku was already in league with Palpatine before Qui-Gon's death. So even with Qui-Gon being alive, Dooku would still have left the Order and led the Separatists. He would have also wanted to reach out to Qui-Gon and ask him to join the Separatists, but Sidious would not have allowed it, believing that Qui-Gon would only ever be an ally to Dooku, not to Sidious. Anyways, back to the story. So eventually, Palpatine decided it was time to set the final stages of his plan in motion. He instructed Dooku to officially declare war against the Republic, unleashing the full might of the Separatist army. The news sent shockwaves through the galaxy, with systems scrambling to choose sides. Simultaneously, following Palpatine's carefully orchestrated plan, Dooku contacted the Kaminoans. He instructed them to reach out to the Republic, informing them of the existence of the clone army that had been commissioned years ago. The timing was impeccable. With the Separatist threat looming large and no standing army to defend itself, the Republic was desperate for a solution. When the Kaminoan delegation arrived on Coruscant, they were immediately granted an audience with the Supreme Chancellor and representatives from the Jedi Council. The news of a fully trained and equipped army ready for deployment seemed almost too good to be true. The Jedi naturally had questions. They pressed the Kaminoans for details about the army's origin. As instructed by Dooku, the Kaminoans maintained that the army had been commissioned by Master Sifo Dyas, a former member of the Jedi Council. After the Kaminoans revealed the army's existence, citing only Sifo Dyas's involvement, the decision to use it ultimately fell to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. And with the Separatists already having declared war, and with Senator Amidala away from Coruscant, it became very easy for Palpatine to manipulate Representative Jar Jar Binks into proposing a motion to grant the Chancellor emergency powers. The motion passed, and Palpatine used these new powers to immediately approve the use of the clone army. With this act, Palpatine, in his dual role as Chancellor and Darth Sidious, set the Clone Wars into motion, furthering his grand plan for galactic domination. As the Clone Wars raged on, the galaxy found itself embroiled in a conflict of unprecedented scale. The Jedi, now serving as generals, led clone armies across countless worlds. Among them, Anakin Skywalker had risen to the rank of Jedi Knight. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the war, tension simmered within the Separatist leadership. Count Dooku, while outwardly loyal to Darth Sidious, found himself increasingly conflicted. The ideals that had initially drawn him to the Separatist cause, which was a desire to reform a corrupt republic, were being overshadowed by Sidious's machinations. Dooku's thoughts often drifted to his former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn. He had respected Sidious's decision not to recruit Qui-Gon initially, understanding the risk it posed to their plans. Yet, as the war dragged on and the casualties mounted, Dooku found himself longing for an ally who shared his true vision for galactic reform. Darth Sidious, ever perceptive, sensed this growing conflict within his apprentice. He recognized that Dooku's lingering attachment to Qui-Gon and his ideals could potentially jeopardize the grand plan. As the war reached its midpoint, Sidious decided it was time to eliminate this liability. The Sith Lord began to lay the groundwork for Dooku's removal. He cultivated General Grievous as a more ruthless and unquestioning military leader. Simultaneously, he guided Nute Gunray and the other members of the Separatist Council to take on a more prominent leadership role. And when it finally became time to execute the plan, Sidious approached Dooku with a new mission. "Lord Tyrannus," he said, his holographic form flickering ominously, "I have foreseen an opportunity to strike a decisive blow against the Jedi. You will meet with representatives of the Republic for peace negotiations. Among them will be young Skywalker." Dooku's eyes narrowed at the mention of Anakin. "The Chosen One? You wish for me to eliminate him during these talks?" Sidious nodded. "He must be dealt with before he becomes a true threat to our plans." Dooku's face tightened as he processed Sidious's words. A flicker of reluctance crossed his features, quickly masked by a practiced stoicism. He knew that this act would irreparably damage any chance of reconciling with Qui-Gon or bringing him to their cause. For a brief moment, he wondered if this was Sidious's true motivation, to sever his last tie to the Jedi Order and his former life. "I understand, my lord," Dooku replied, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "It shall be done." Sidious's hologram flickered, a thin smile spreading across his face. "Excellent, Lord Tyrannus. Do not fail me in this crucial task." As the transmission ended, Dooku sat in silent contemplation. He saw no alternative but to comply with his master's wishes. To defy Sidious now would mean certain death, and Dooku still believed in the greater goal of reforming the galaxy, even if the methods had become more extreme than he had initially envisioned. And so the peace negotiations were soon arranged to take place on a neutral location. The night before the scheduled meeting, Dooku retired to his quarters on the neutral world, where the negotiations were to take place. He meticulously checked his lightsaber and reviewed the building's layout one final time. As he prepared to meditate, a sudden chill ran down his spine. The Force rippled with a dark presence. Dooku spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his lightsaber. There, emerging from the shadows, stood a cloaked figure, Darth Sidious himself. "Master," Dooku said, surprise and confusion evident in his voice. "I did not expect you here." Sidious lowered his hood, his yellow eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Plans change, Lord Tyrannus. Your services are no longer required." In that instant, Dooku understood. He had been outmaneuvered, his usefulness at an end. Without hesitation, he ignited his curved lightsaber, its red blade humming to life. Sidious cackled, drawing his own weapon. The room erupted in a storm of crimson as the two Sith Lords clashed. Dooku's masterful swordsmanship met Sidious's raw power and speed. Furniture splintered and walls scorched as they dueled, the confined space adding to the intensity of the fight. Despite his skill, Dooku found himself on the defensive. Sidious's attacks came with a ferocity he had never witnessed before. As they locked blades, Sidious leaned in close, his voice a menacing whisper. "You should have known, my apprentice. There is no room for divided loyalties in our new empire." With a burst of Force lightning, Sidious broke through Dooku's guard. The Count stumbled, momentarily stunned. It was all the opening Sidious needed. With a swift, merciless strike, he drove his lightsaber through Dooku's chest. Dooku's eyes widened in shock and pain. He deactivated his lightsaber and gripped it for a short moment before his body gave up. As he fell to his knees, his last thoughts were of Qui-Gon and the path not taken. As Dooku's lifeless body crumpled to the floor, the repercussions of his death rippled across the galaxy. The Separatist Council, led by Nute Gunray and General Grievous, wasted no time in decrying what they called a treacherous assassination. They claimed that Dooku had been lured to the neutral world under the false pretense of peace negotiations, only to be struck down by the Jedi and the Republic. The outcry was immediate and intense. Systems that had been wavering in their loyalty to the Separatist cause now hardened their resolve. More worlds seceded from the Republic, swelling the Separatist ranks. Any hope of peaceful resolution to the conflict evaporated, replaced by a renewed fervor for war. On Coruscant, Qui-Gon Jinn sat in deep meditation, trying to center himself after receiving news of Dooku's death. Despite the official narrative, he sensed that there was more to this situation than met the eye. The truth remained elusive, shrouded in darkness. Suddenly, Qui-Gon's contemplation was interrupted by an alert from his personal comm unit. An encrypted transmission had arrived, marked with a familiar signature, Dooku's. With a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, Qui-Gon decrypted the message. A hologram of Dooku flickered to life before him. "Qui-Gon, my old friend," the recorded message began. "If you are viewing this, then I am dead. Killed by Darth Sidious. This message was set to transmit upon my death, triggered by a mechanism in my lightsaber." What followed was a confession that shook Qui-Gon to his core. Dooku revealed everything: his fall to the dark side, his alliance with the Sith, and most shockingly, the true identity of Darth Sidious, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. Dooku's hologram continued, detailing Palpatine's grand plan for galactic domination. He spoke of the clone army's true origin, Sidious' assassination, the inhibitor chips implanted in the clones, and the sinister Order 66 designed to turn the clones against the Jedi. I realize now, too late, that the rule of the Sith will be no better than the corrupt republic I sought to overthrow. My death at Sidious's hands is proof of this, Dooku's image said, regret evident in his voice. As the transmission ended, Qui-Gon sat in stunned silence. The implications of what he had just learned were staggering. Without hesitation, he brought this information to the Jedi Council. Qui-Gon played Dooku's message for the Council. As the hologram flickered out, a heavy silence fell over the room. Master Yoda broke the silence, his ears drooping slightly. In death, a noble Jedi once more, Dooku has become. The Council quickly agreed on a course of action. They knew they had to move against Palpatine as fast as possible. Qui-Gon also informed his former apprentice, now Knight Skywalker, of the situation. It was his destiny to end the Sith, after all. The Jedi's plan was meticulous. Understanding the full extent of Palpatine's control and the danger he posed, they knew arrest was not an option. The Sith Lord had to be eliminated. There was no other way. To prevent any possibility of Order 66 being activated, they first moved to jam all transmissions from the Federal District. Master Plo Koon, along with a team of skilled Jedi technicians, set up a series of signal jammers around the perimeter of the Federal District. As the jammers hummed to life, all communications in and out of the area were effectively cut off. With communications secured, a strike team consisting of Mace Windu, Yoda, Anakin, Qui-Gon, Agent Kolar, Kit Fisto, and Shakti made their way to the Chancellor's office. Their intent was clear and unified: to end the threat of the Sith once and for all. As they entered Palpatine's office, there were no declarations, no attempts at arrest. The Jedi ignited their lightsabers in unison, the hum of their blades filling the suddenly tense air. Palpatine's kindly facade dropped away instantly, replaced by a sneer of contempt. "So it's treason then," he growled, rising from his chair. With inhuman speed, Palpatine produced his own lightsaber. The battle that ensued was fierce and swift. Palpatine, realizing he had been discovered, fought with all the power and fury of the dark side. In the initial onslaught, Agent Kolar and Kit Fisto fell to Palpatine's blade, but the remaining Jedi pressed on, their coordination and unity proving a match for the Sith Lord's raw power. Palpatine, sensing the tide turning against him, attempted to escape through a shattered window. However, his path was blocked by the remaining Jedi. Yoda's acrobatic form kept Palpatine distracted, while Mace Windu's Vaapad pushed the Sith Lord to his limits. Qui-Gon and Anakin worked in perfect sync, their years of training together evident in every move. Soon enough, as Yoda occupied Palpatine's attention, Mace saw an opening and struck, severing Palpatine's arms. In the same moment, Qui-Gon disabled the Sith's legs with a precise strike. Anakin, seizing the opportunity, delivered the final blow. With the decisive strike, he separated Palpatine's head from his body. And so Darth Sidious, the architect of so much suffering, the Sith Lord who had nearly brought the galaxy to its knees, was no more. As the Sith Lord's body crumpled to the floor, a shockwave of dark energy pulsed through the Force, felt by Force sensitives across Coruscant. Then, silence fell over the Chancellor's office. So, in the end, it was Palpatine's underestimation of Dooku that led to his downfall. In the aftermath of Palpatine's death, the Jedi presented Dooku's evidence to the Senate. Holographic recordings, financial transactions, and detailed accounts of Palpatine's machinations painted a damning picture of the former Chancellor's true nature. The Senate, shocked and horrified by the extent of the deception, moved to undo the damage Palpatine had wrought. With the puppet master gone, the strings holding the war together began to unravel. The Separatist leadership, no longer manipulated by Sidious, found themselves more open to negotiation. The clone army, after careful deprogramming and removal of the inhibitor chips, became a force for peace rather than a tool of destruction. Within months, peace talks began in earnest. And so, soon enough, the war that had torn the galaxy apart for years came to an end, and a new era of rebuilding and reconciliation dawned. Qui-Gon Jinn, his role in uncovering the Sith plot widely recognized, spent his remaining years teaching at the Jedi Temple. He focused on passing on his wisdom to the next generation of Jedi, emphasizing the importance of balance and understanding the living Force. When his time came, years later, Qui-Gon passed peacefully into the Force. Anakin Skywalker, tempered by Qui-Gon's wisdom and free from Palpatine's influence, grew into a powerful and respected Jedi Master. His experiences during the war and the confrontation with Palpatine gave him unique insights that proved invaluable to the Order. In recognition of his growth and contributions, Anakin was granted a seat on the Jedi Council, where he became a voice for reform and progress. In the years that followed, the galaxy enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity. The Jedi, having faced their greatest trial, emerged stronger and wiser. They took on a renewed role as peacekeepers and mediators, helping to heal the wounds left by the war. While challenges would always arise in a galaxy so vast and diverse, for now at least, there was peace. The revenge of the Sith had been thwarted, their grand plan for galactic domination foiled.